Hey guys, so before we get into the garden tour today, I have two big announcements for you. First of all, I have just launched the spring sticker design on my Patreon. Every 3 months, I introduce a brand new sticker design. It is a limited run, so outside of those 3 months, it is not available anywhere. I don't have a physical copy to show you, but I can put it right here. Look how cute it is. This sticker was designed by my brother-in-law, and he will be getting a portion of the proceeds from Patreon during the months that his sticker is available. So if you want to support me and you want to support his artistry, then please consider checking out the link below to join my Patreon. And the second big announcement is that I am going to be on Let's Get Growing, this YouTube show again. You might have seen me on it about this time last year. It was actually right after I got out of the hospital with all my kidney stone stuff, and I've been invited back as a guest. So that will be on April 7th. I'll put more details down below, but you'll definitely want to catch me live on that show. Alright, so as you can see, my grow light setup looks a little less crowded than it did, but that's just because a couple of things have been outside for a few hours, starting to kind of harden them off a little bit. It has been so warm lately. Last night, our lows did not get below 60 Fahrenheit, which is very, very warm for here, especially considering that in a couple of days, we're gonna have lows in the 30s again, very close to freezing. And as much as I wanted to plant my tomatoes out and take that chance because it's probably not actually going to freeze, I'm gonna wait. You know, these peppers, they need space. They need those cups that the tomatoes are in. They need the trays. But I would rather have successful tomatoes and have my peppers be just a little crowded for one more week. I think by next weekend, I can be planting out my tomatoes and everything will be just fine. In order to make more space, I have planted out a couple of things. I planted out one of my valerian and one of my feverfew starts. I have extras here just in case it ends up being a little too early for them. I put out all of my lemon balm because that should take the cold just fine. I'm still waiting on my St. John's wort and my marshmallow. Eggplant have been potted up. You can see the massive difference between the ones that sprouted the first time that I planted them and the ones that I had to plant again. They're just little babies. I've also learned that fenugreek, I should have looked this up before I planted it, obviously, but here we are. I've learned that it's kind of more of a cool weather herb, kind of like cilantro, and if I plant it outside, it will go to seed in the heat pretty soon. So I took these 3 and I put them in a bigger pot, and I'm gonna try and keep them indoors this summer. Something very interesting and weird though is my nasturtiums and my marigolds. 0 of them sprouted. And I planted several varieties of each, and so I'm just very confused why absolutely none of them would have sprouted. These are not really difficult to germinate flowers, and they were all in a tray with other stuff that sprouted, which I don't know, sometimes plants do this, but like the fact that it's just all the marigolds and all the nasturtium makes me think that like something is wrong, but I don't yet really know what that is. So I am going to just try again, see if it was a fluke, and then after that I may end up direct sowing. This entire tray here are sweet peppers of the lipstick pepper variety, and they are actually getting so big. You see, oh, let me get you in. Right there on the top, these little balls, those are flowers. And I've been trying to come through and pull off any flowers that these plants are trying to make because it is definitely not the right time for them to be flowering. I gotta get them outside and I gotta get them established before I actually let them start to flower. This would also be about the time that I would top my peppers if I was going to do that. And I do have videos, I'll link them down below and I'll link them up here, where I talk about topping peppers, which is just cutting off the whole top of the plant so that it branches out more. I think this year I'm going to only do that with hot peppers and not sweet peppers, because just in my experience, when you top a sweet pepper that's making a big pepper, I guess, okay, I'm gonna rephrase that. I'm gonna not top my bigger peppers, which happen to all be my sweet peppers, and top my hot peppers, which happen to all be much smaller peppers. But anyway, in my experience, when you top a pepper plant that's making big peppers, you get smaller peppers from it, and you do get more of them, but they're all just a little bit smaller. And I would rather have fewer bigger peppers from my sweet ones. And then from the hot ones, if they're just a little bit smaller, it doesn't really matter. I think because they're smaller to start with, the size difference is actually not really that noticeable. So pepper plants that make smaller peppers just tend to do better as far as branching out after topping. This little one right behind me this whole time I'm filming, trying to get my attention by being a little menace. So down here, this is a pepper and then 2 ginger. I actually still only have 2 that have come up, but given how long it takes these things to sprout, that's really not that weird. And then yet another full tray of sweet peppers. These ones are from saved seeds that I saved from a Lesa pepper plant a couple of years ago. I don't know if I protected the blossom properly, so we'll see what kind of peppers these all turn out to be. They might even end up being hot if they accidentally got cross-pollinated with something hot, but I guess we will find out. I've been keeping the grapes that I bought from the store just on my messy kitchen counter, and I noticed they are starting to sprout, which means I should get them in the ground pretty soon. I am setting up the pergola / trellis with my dad this coming weekend, so it's only a few more days until they get to be planted out in the ground. And next week you guys are gonna get to see like the whole thing all put together. Like today, there is definitely some really cool changes outside that you're gonna see, but I mean, the pergola is like the centerpiece. That is the thing that I'm the most excited about. So currently it is about 75 out here, which is 24 Celsius. And it's been so warm, I've just been leaving my door open. Actually, this little bug net thing, this is awesome. It just magnets open and closed. I love leaving my door open in the spring and the summer. It's nice for the cats to go in and out. It's nice to just like hear the birds outside and the wind chimes. Really lovely. Out here we have all of my tomato starts. I did give them a little bit of fish emulsion and they are looking a little bit better. Like these, you can see they're getting a little greener. And I know that once I plant them in the ground, they'll have access to all the nutrients they need. So I just kind of need to limp them along through this last week before I can get them planted out. These ones I was talking about that are a little curly have continued to be a little curly, and I actually went back and looked to try and remember what exactly caused this last time. And I was mistaken. It was not a like disease of the plant. It was actually potentially, I guess I don't know this for sure, but I think that it was a contamination with grazon that really makes plants curl like this. I'm really surprised that it has any flat leaves at all, because in my experience with the grazon, that curling tends to happen from the very beginning. And there's also only a couple of these that are showing this. And when all of them were planted into the exact same compost and soil. So I don't know if that really makes sense for these particular plants, but I do want to tell you that based on what I went back and looked through in previous years, this does look a lot like that grazon pesticide contamination. Sorry, not pesticide, it's an herbicide. Basically, it is sprayed on grass crops to keep down a lot of weeds. Nightshades and legumes are particularly susceptible to this herbicide. And so you could spray it on your corn all day and see no issues, but tomatoes, peppers, beans, they'll all show very clear signs if your garden is contaminated with this. And I'll link below, above and below, a video that I made talking about this herbicide and how to test if it's in stuff like your straw that you're buying, because that's very likely, given that straw is a grass crop that would be resistant to it. Anyway, I don't know how I would have gotten such localized contamination, but you know, these plants, since they're continuing to be curly, I probably will not plant them out and will just dispose of them. Whatever they have, whether it's contamination or a disease of some kind, I probably just don't want it in my garden, so I will likely just take these into the trash, which is sad because I would like to compost them, but if it is graze-on, that stuff persists in the soil for quite a while, so I don't want to put that back in there. So I know from here you can already see a little bit of the big difference, but we're going to save that for last. We are going to come over here to the soon-to-be tomato trellis and just kind of take a look at how things are going. We have, remember, garlic running through here along with a bunch of weeds that I haven't bothered pulling. Oh, look at this honeybee. It's so cute. There's actually honeybees all over these flowers, and it's one of the reasons why I haven't really pulled a lot of weeds out of my garden. This is the only flowering thing besides, I think, the fava beans that they can really get into, and I don't need that space at the moment, so why not let it benefit the bees? My fava beans in this area in particular are looking pretty bad. I've had one fully die, and this one looks like it's on the way. This other one over here, right there, also not looking very happy. And I'm not entirely sure why, because I have fava beans planted at the same time in other areas of the garden that look great. These particular ones looked fine and have just started looking worse and worse. Maybe they got a little extra damage, who knows. Even when you've been gardening for a few years, it can still be very difficult to figure out exactly why certain plants don't do well. Alright, in this second row, we've got a little bit more to look at. We've got lettuces over here. I've already started pulling from some of them. These are about the right size to start picking baby greens off of. And I have, I think, plenty to where I can harvest just a couple of leaves off of each of these and end up with a at least personal sized salad. One of the things I planted out the other day was my zinnias. It is a little early to plant out zinnia starts, but I started them way too early, and so they really needed to go out. They're such fast growers though that if these actually all completely die, that'll be fine. I'll have plenty of time to start more, so might as well give it a shot, get these guys out of the house where the peppers really need that space, and maybe we'll have some early zinnias, who knows. This section right here is all onions that I started myself from seed, whereas the vast majority of onions in my garden I bought as starts. And these are actually the biggest onions in my garden because I put them in much earlier than the starts that I got, and they look so healthy. I'm still very confused by this one red one because I definitely planted seeds from a yellow onion, but you know, I don't know, genetics are funny. We'll see what color it actually ends up being. But yeah, these are some sturdy, really good looking onions. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then baby 7 leaf coming out right there. Ideally, an onion will have 13 leaves by the time you harvest it, and these are well on their way. Looking at the Brussels sprouts, these have definitely fully gone to seed now, and a couple of these plants are fully covered in aphids, which I was talking about this being ladybug attractant, and looky there, we've got a ladybug. I saw another one yesterday. Aphids are like their favorite food, so having all of these aphids here is like a big welcome buffet sign for ladybugs in the garden. And then these ones that don't have aphids still don't have aphids and look really nice and healthy. They're starting to go to seed. I could cut the top off of this and eat it if I wanted to, like little tiny broccolis. but I think I'll leave it. This one over here is starting to actually open up flowers, and pretty soon I think this will be like extending out pretty large. You can see all these little offshoots forming, and they'll all get really long. But these will start forming little pods, and then I'll have little seeds, and I don't know. I just think it's really beautiful. But I mean, even at any point here, I could cut a couple of these off and add them to my dinner. In the trellis row, we're still waiting on that last threat of frost to pass before we plant anything. I do have a few lettuces down here. This is one of each variety that I have so that I can kind of see them all side by side. This green one with the curly leaves is Cosmo romaine. This one is Jericho romaine. We've got Merlot lettuce and Sweet Valentine romaine. And I say those varieties every week just as much for myself as I do for you, so that I don't forget what I planted. In this back section behind the trellises, there's not a whole lot here. There's a couple of lettuces, a spinach. I do have this onion that I'm letting go to seed. This is actually the first onion to start making flowers this year. And this is exactly what I want from it. You can see it was a bulb last year that has split into many bulbs, the way that alliums do. And now it is making its seeds. These will be beautiful flowers in a couple of weeks. In the last row over here, these are the good-looking fava beans. You can see they're just covered in flowers. And let's see, still don't see any obvious beans on them yet. Actually, oh, I lied. Here's one. That's a little bean. I'm sure all the bees in the area are making sure that all these flowers get pollinated. Well, I just kind of love the way these look. They look so healthy and beautiful with their little white and black flowers. But I am excited to get some fresh fava beans from these as well. Also, if you didn't know, the shoots of these are edible. Down at the other end with the soon-to-be flowering Romanescos, we've got, again, I could eat this now even though it's way past its like headed broccoli stage, but I am going to let that flower. This one down here has already started putting on its cute little yellow flowers. Speaking of flowers, my irises that are all along kind of the mound of the swale look like they are getting ready to bloom. That looks like a closed flower bloom right there. Alright, so I've kept you waiting long enough. Let's look at all the work that I've done in the raised bed side of my yard. So I have actually mulched all the way from the path to the berry patch. The goal here is definitely to not have to mulch or mow all the time. So I have started planting some low-growing plants that hopefully will be beautiful, maybe edible, and not need to be mowed. This is creeping time right here, and I did plant some moss in some of the shadier areas. I covered everything in cardboard and then put the mulch on top. I got all of this mulch for free from the city. If you should check if they do this in your municipality if you want it, but basically those trucks that come along and pick up all the brush off the side of the road, the city actually mulches that and gives that back to the community. So that's what all of this is. There are 2 cats in frame right now. Can you find them? We've got one right there and the other one under the stairs right there. Another one of the plants that I planted out is my calendula. These should take the cold temperatures pretty well also. And so these are in one of my newer raised beds next to this new Italian oregano that I bought. I do have an Italian oregano already, but the flavor of it has just gone like light and minty, maybe a little soapy. And so I got this one just in case that one's flavor doesn't ever go back. Which I'm hoping it will with like the summer temperatures, but I've got 2 now at least. Here's the original, and you can see the leaves are actually much smaller than that other plant, and I don't know if they've always been smaller like this. I don't remember. But this was also a bought plant, and I know that these plants don't live forever, so I don't know. Tell me if y'all have ever experienced your oregano like drastically changing flavor with the seasons or with age. One of my lemon balm is in this bed with all of the other perennials. They're in the mint family, but they're not supposed to take over like mint does, so hopefully it'll be okay up here in this raised bed. So as of right now, I only have 1 more raised bed to fill. This one is newly filled. I put purple potatoes in it, and I put them in the shallower one because they're supposed to be a determinate variety. They shouldn't really need any mounding, whereas the ones over here are indeterminate, and I should be able to mound them up to get an extra harvest. Right here in the shade are the 3 mosses that I've planted out as like kind of an experiment to see how they do. Hopefully a good rain comes soon and these guys get to kind of spread out along the mulch, and they look really dense. I'm hoping that they will kind of shade out the grass in this area. I'll probably have to give them some help and help them compete with the grass a bit, but like, wouldn't this be much nicer to have in this little area, than grass. Coming in to look at the blueberries, you can see these flowers that have the green coming out of the center. That to me looks like a well-pollinated flower. I think we are going to have some berries this year, which is exciting. Also, interestingly, you notice the little brown spots on these flowers, kind of all in a similar spot. I saw a bumblebee the other day landing on these flowers and kind of sticking its face through these holes. I think that's what's been making these holes in the flowers. That's how it gets to the nectar or pollen inside, because the tips of these are not exactly big enough for bumblebees. I'm also anxiously watching my strawberry flowers. It'll be a little while before these turn into fruit, but I'm seeing more and more flowers every day. Like, there's this one big open one, but there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more down under there. This is about to be a very productive little strawberry patch. I haven't seen any of the blackberry or raspberry flowers open up yet, but it looks like they're getting pretty close. Like, especially right here, you can start seeing the little bit of pink poking through. Let's take a look at it from the other direction. Oh, doesn't that look so nice? Look at all that lawn that I don't have to mow anymore. And I swear I am not posing these cats. They just follow me and do cute things like this. Oh my goodness. If you ever want to be able to tell my cats apart, this one is Kata. She's got a yellow collar and her fur is shinier and she is a bit bigger than Draco. And Draco, who is getting himself all messy on the sidewalk, he's a little bit skinnier, red collar, much sweeter, likes pets a little bit better. This boy is 11 years old now, whereas Kata, I think she's like 3. Alright, so you guys know we always do a rotating segment here at the end of the garden tours, and this week it is time again to look at seasonal weeds. This is a time of year when the sorts of weeds that I see growing in my yard really change a lot, and I'm going to be going over mostly just the edible weeds because those are the ones that I think are the most interesting and helpful to know about as a gardener, because if you've got these edible weeds, then maybe you don't want to be pulling them. So last time we did this, we talked about henbit and dead nettle. Dead nettle is this one that is starting to look like it's dying here. It is an edible plant, often used medicinally, and henbit looks a lot like it, except it's got like rounder leaves. I'll try and find one to show you. This is a good example of henbit, and if we take that and look at it next to dead nettle, you can see the very different leaf structures, but both of these are edible and they've got those cute little purple flowers. But as you can see, the time is passing for dead nettle. I think it's just not handling the heat well. You can see it's getting a little bit of what I think is powdery mildew, and it is just starting to die back in a lot of areas in the garden. This clover though, this is coming into its time. It is very happy. Clover is edible, but it does taste a lot like grass. If you want something really tasty that looks like clover, you're going to want to look for wood sorrel. This has these little heart-shaped leaves, the little dents in them, unlike clover that has like very round leaves. And when you taste it, it tastes a little bit lemony. Last time we touched on seasonal weeds, I also mentioned the wild violets starting to come in. They hadn't really quite started flowering, but now I have them everywhere. I've been harvesting a ton of these flowers for tea. They make tea such a pretty color, and the leaves are also edible. But with this plant, be careful. Anything that's not above ground is not edible on these. Since my regular strawberries are flowering, it's also the time of year to look for wild strawberries flowering. Now this is actually a false strawberry, and I know that because I've seen the fruit. I don't know how you would tell without seeing the fruit. But these are edible, but they're just really not that tasty. They do take over though. They provide very good ground cover. Sometimes it's a little too aggressive, but when I see these in my garden, I pull them up because they spread like crazy. Chickweed is also starting to pop up everywhere. I think I also mentioned this in my last seasonal weeds tour, but it was just starting to come in, and now it is everywhere. It is also starting to flower. If I can get the camera to focus on those pretty little flowers. There we go. Little white flowers like that. The way you ID chickweed is it has a line of hairs along the stem. I know it's hard to see on camera, but it will just be one line of hairs. It won't be like hairy all over the stem. This one is edible, also tastes a little bit like grass, so probably a little bit better cooked, but I just don't have a ton of experience with that, beyond knowing that it is edible. Of course, we can't talk about edible weeds of the spring without talking again about dandelions. All parts of this plant are edible. I'm sure you've heard a lot about it. The green is what I use the most. It's a great bitter to add into salads for your digestion, just so long as you pick the new fresh leaves and you don't put too much in. When you're identifying it, you want to look for the ones that have the flowers coming from the center. A lot of lookalikes have like flowers on branching stems, but true dandelion comes straight from the center. Another edible to look out for in the spring is plantain. Mine has just started to come back. These big leaves with the veins running all the way along the leaves, and when you pull it, it's got some little strings that tend to come with it, and it's kind of a mucusy leaf if you were to chew it up. This is broadleaf plantain. This is right next to narrowleaf plantain. You can see it has that same defining characteristic of having those really long veins going all the way up the leaf, those strings when you pull it apart, and it feels like the same type of leaf. And I think both of these are approximately the same as far as medicinal benefits. I'm not an herbalist, so I'm not going to go into all of that here, but I can at least tell you that it's edible and you should look into it. This one is Carolina cranesbill, sometimes called wild geranium. You can see that it's got these reddish stems. It's spreading out, and specifically the leaves are very deeply lobed. And this plant actually is usually medicinal, and I've seen, you know, competing articles saying, oh, it is edible, it's not edible, but they all agree that it was and is used medicinally. This one is all over the garden right now, right here. This is called bedstraw or gripweed, and if you touch it, you'll instantly understand why. It's like Velcro-y. It sticks to clothing really bad. It also kind of sticks to your skin, like it's
it's rough, like it wants to yank on you. And this one actually is edible, although I'm not quite sure why you would want to eat it. However, I did read that people like dry and roast the berries for like a coffee substitute. I'm pretty sure that would not be caffeinated, similar to like the dandelion root coffee. But yeah, this bed straw also gets its name because it's like really difficult to compress once dried. So I think that's pretty neat. This little one is called parsley peart. It is, I don't think it's related to regular parsley, but it's this tiny little thing. There's little patches all over my garden right now, and this one is also edible and supposedly medicinal. And that is all the seasonal edible weeds that I currently know about, although there's quite a few more plants out here that I don't actually know what they are. So there could be more that I'm missing, but that is mostly what I normally would see in the spring. One more look at this from the porch. Oh, it looks so nice. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, happy gardening.